Let's shift our attention to Ondo State. It is exactly 3 weeks to the November 16 governorship election in the state, and political parties are ramping up their campaigns with candidates making numerous promises and introducing policy plans to sway voters. In their bid to win over the electorate, political parties are actively promoting their candidates to ensure the people have the information needed to make an informed choice. But the APC Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has been appointed chairman of the National Campaign Council, formed by the ruling All Progressives Congress, to drive the party's campaign for the Ondo governorship election. Governor Sanwo-Olu is set to lead the 305-member council, and he will be supported by former Deputy Senate President, Senator Ovio Mwagege, who serves as secretary, alongside prominent APC figures such as Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State, Kebbi State Governor Nasir Idris, Governor Dapo Abiodun, and the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume. Joining me tonight is the chieftain of the APC in Ondo State, and he was also an aspirant, Dr. Soji Enyilanwo, a senior information technology consultant and manager. He's also a technocrat and a politician. He was a former governorship candidate of the defunct CPC, one of the legacy parties that fused to become the APC in the 2012 Ondo governorship election. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on Politics Tonight. It's great to have you join us again. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. It's my pleasure joining you.
Good evening to you. So the last time we had a conversation was before the primaries of your party. But sadly, the outcome of the primary election did not favor you and 16 others. Governor Ayedatiwa emerged as the candidate. Did that come to you as a surprise? Or you knew you had no chance?
No, certainly not. I mean, I went into that contest hoping to be the candidate of the party. And just to correct you, it was 16 of us, 15 of us didn't get a ticket. So Governor Ayedatiwa got a ticket. So yeah, back to your question. I went to that contest with the aim of emerging as a candidate. But as it turned out, Governor Ayedatiwa got the ticket, and that's not totally unexpected, because we also knew that out of the 16 of us, only one of us would be the candidate. I thought it was going to be myself, but unfortunately it wasn't. And it's Governor Ayedatiwa, and that's what we're focused on now.
Yeah, majorly because that primary election caused a major rift within the party. It further divided the party because, at the instance, Kate's demise was a factor. There were those who thought Ayedatiwa's rocking relationship with the late governor was an indication that he cannot succeed at Katie. After the primaries also, about 7 aspirants filed petitions to contest the outcome of that primary election. But as we speak, what kind of relationship do you have with Governor Lucky Ayedatiwa?
We have a very cordial relationship. It might interest you that after the contest, I was, of all of these 15 other candidates, I was the first one to congratulate the governor on his emergence. So my relationship with him is good. You mentioned the fact that there were issues after the primaries. That's not unexpected. That happened, and I think that we are very much in a good place now. All of those issues have been smoothened out, as far as I know, and we're very much focused on the election. And that election, we believe we're going to win. I
mean, the election is in 3 weeks, but how united is Ondo APC ahead of that election? Because from the kinds of meetings we've seen recently, the kinds of defection, recently it was reported that a former APC senatorial aspirant, that's Dr. Adeniran Oyebade, led over 1,000 members from the 6 local government areas of Ondo senatorial district to join the APC, to join the PDP rather. And similarly, some APC women leaders in the Akoko area and others in Akure have also pitched tents with the PDP. Does that bother you that this is happening a few weeks to the election?
Quite honestly, some of the people you have mentioned, there are people that I don't know. I don't think very many people know them. Sometimes I even feel that it's all a ruse, But it will interest you to find out that a lot of people have been much more people have been coming into the APC, or since we had our primaries and as we moved towards the election. I know that the PDP, which is the other major party, is totally depleted. I mean, you'll hear several names, associates, for example, of former Governor Mimiko, and a number of others across the 18 local governments coming into the APC. The point about, I don't know, there are probably PDPs, coming up with some unknown names. I'm not even sure about I don't feel that this will have any serious weight. So I think the APC is strong on the ground, focused on winning. We're getting people into the party on a daily basis. The party is more united than ever, and our goals are set at victory, and everything is pointing at that.
But how distinctive is the campaign of the APC in this coming election? I mean, they say that in an ideal democracy, the candidates whose values, political platform and skills align best with most voters' preferences win the election. So what exactly is APC saying to the electorate?
What APC is saying to the electorate, it might interest you that, APC is probably doing the best campaign so far. The governor is leading campaigns across all of the local governments. It's gone through the three senatorial zones in the first instance, and the response to that campaign has been tumultuous. People have embraced the governor. I mean, you needed to have been at some of these campaigns where massive crowds of people, as an indication of their support, their love for the governor. Is reflected. And, the message that the APC is putting across is very simple. This governor has been here for 10 months. We're putting across the scorecard of the governor. He has done well for the state so far. It's just a short span, at the helm of affairs, and he's done so well, across several segments, across, infrastructure development, is doing quite a lot of good things, across education, across health, in terms of welfare. So, it's the scorecard. What the governor has been able to achieve is a man of peace, and all of that. So, what the governor has been able to achieve, the achievements of the governor in the 10 months that he has been in the saddle, is a major thing that our party and the governor is putting across to the people, and that has been acknowledged and embraced.
But Dr. Ilawo, would you say your party or other political parties have adopted issue-based campaign? Because it was just recently the PDP accused the APC of intimidation, of harassment, of not allowing the party use its preferred campaign venue. And also the PDP has accused the governor of siphoning local government funds. How do you react to all of these allegations ahead of the election?
I mean, with all sense of modesty, I think that some of the accusations. From our part of the political divide, I can tell you that we are pushing issues. The governor is telling the people, is going across to the people, is showing them his scorecard, is showing them what he has been able to achieve, and that is promising that he will be able to do more if given the mandate. So we're going to issues across all segments. I know that in recent times, the major political parties have been coming up with all sorts of, allegations and insinuations, but I don't think they hold water. They don't, but of course you will expect this as the elections comes closer, all of those things. But there's no basis in some of the allegations that have been made. And I have not seen, to be honest, a serious issue-based campaign from the PDP. I mean, not to talk of all the smaller parties who are, as far as I'm concerned, lightweight as far as this election is concerned. But
because you've talked about scorecard, let's go there. So what do you consider as the APC's selling point in Ondo State?
The APC selling point, some of they are numerous. But I'll just highlight a few. I mean, as far as the government came on board, it prioritized, for example, the welfare of workers and pensioners and all of that. And I am aware that he has paid, the salaries of workers have been paid regularly. He has, cleared backlog of salaries and gratuities. I mean, that is quite impressive. It shows a governor that has empathy. It shows an administration that has empathy. Again, in terms of infrastructure, in just a space of 10 months, roads constructions are going everywhere across different parts of the state. In rural and urban roads, they're all over the place. In Akure, in Ilaje, across the different parts of the state. Education is just recently recruited about 2,000 teachers. in order to tackle education, bursaries have been paid and scholarships have been, given to students. Across all of the different sectors is supporting farmers and all of that. And we know that if given a chance, it can do more. And some of us, this is not the time for any Ondo State indigene to stay on the sidelines. We want rapid progress for our state. And Governor Loki Aiyedatiwa and our party are the ones that can deliver that.
But it looks like there is a lot to be done when it comes to infrastructure. I mean, it does not look like the APC has done well in that regard. As we speak, some traditional heads are still appealing to the governor to invest more in infrastructure development. The last appeal came from the monarch of Afao-Kiagbe community in Akoko Northwest local government area. He's asking the governor to improve the infrastructure facilities in the community. So how committed is your party to making sure that Ondo State is attractive to investors in the next 4 years?
I think the governor is very much committed to that. I don't accept the point that enough has not been done about infrastructure. You see, infrastructure development is an ongoing thing. The governor within these 10 months, as like I said, you can see all of is constructing new roads, is repairing some other ones across the entire part of the state. And don't forget, because you mentioned the APC, before the governor came, Governor Credo before him was one of the governors. Is one of the governors in the history of Ondo State that has achieved so much in terms of infrastructure development. So we have an history. APC has an history of strong infrastructure development in its belt, and that's what this governor is going to expand upon. We are confident that he can do it. He has shown his mettle within these 10 months. And we cannot risk bringing in somebody who will undermine all of that has been achieved.
Because when you say that infrastructural development is an ongoing thing, does it mean that the APC pays more attention to some communities than other communities?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if you look at the long way of infrastructure development that has been done in Ondo State, it's been balanced. But you would agree with me that it's unlikely, particularly with him within 10 months, for him to have touched everywhere. It's been quite balanced in terms of.
But the APC was also in government before this 10 months.
Yeah, before this time, that's what I said to you. Everybody, most people, objective analysts will acknowledge, will agree that the infrastructure development that happened when the Governor Credo was in saddle was quite unprecedented in Ondo State. So it's like I said, it's an ongoing thing. We hope to achieve much more when the people give Governor Aiyedatiwa the mandate. So it's an ongoing thing, and that's what as a party we're committed to that. As the governor of Ondo State, if he's given the further mandate, is committed to that as far as I know.
I hear you, Dr. Ilawo, but I think some Ondo stakeholders would not agree with you. I mean, what they say, according to reports, is that there are too many abandoned projects in Ondo State. It seems to be a lot because recently traditional heads in the local government area also appealed to the governor to revive the abandoned of our mini ports to boost commercial activities in that locality, and also the channelization of our coastal line where the mini port is located to unlock the full potential of its coastal resources. I mean, it battles many that past administration in the state abandoned such a revenue-generating sector. On those states, does the government intend to address this, and when?
Like I said, those who are critical, like you have said, they probably talked about some of the projects that are not done. But it will interest you that they'll probably not make so much noise about it. There's so many projects that have been done while Akeredolu was governor. I know, for example, several road projects, that Akeredolu. For example, in Akoko, for example, Alabojuto, I think, was one that Akeredolu did. That road, no one could could go through that area. Even before Akeredolu, focused on that, and there are a diversity of other things that he did as well. So he is acknowledged. Any objective analysts agree that Akeredolu achieved much more than most governors in terms of infrastructure development for Ondo State. And don't forget, this governor has just been there for 10 months. It's done quite a lot in terms of opening rural roads, rural communities, and as well as quite a number of urban roads. And that trend is what will continue. What will continue. It's perfectly normal that as it goes with his campaign, that traditional rulers, stakeholders will point to him things that are yet undone or unfinished. That's the way it should be. Because this is a governor who listens. It's taking it on belt. It's taking note of that, and of course he would fulfill promises that he makes.
I mean, some would say he was the deputy governor, so they do not expect this much gap. But let's talk about education, because you mentioned it earlier. You have a strong foundation in academia, but when it comes to how far the APC has gone in improving the quality and quantity of education in Ondo State, especially basic education, do you think the people of Ondo State will vote for your party again?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, in terms of education, he's also this governor, within 10 months, is investing in education. He is constructing new schools and obviously repairing new ones. And it might not even just basic education. When he came into power as governor, he increased the subventions of the institutions across the state. This is a governor who has a commitment and a party with a commitment to building the education base of this state, and that is only bound to get much better, even when he gets the mandate.
But let's stay on this, Dr. Ilanwo, bringing in your wealth of knowledge and expertise. I'm wondering why the number of out-of-school children continues to rise in a state like Ondo State. For some, the number is alarming. For some others, it's not. But in very few years from now, it will run into double digits. Do you blame this on weak legislation or lack of political will to do the right things by successive administration?
I think it's probably a mix of both. But these things are there. It's probably a mix of both. From probably previous administrations. Even administrations that precede the APC. But I think the focus now, of course, will be how to bridge that gap. And I think that to ensure that we continue to provide enough facilities, enough schools, and continue to ensure that.
So when you say it's a combination of both, what exactly do you mean?
Yeah, what I mean is that you mentioned legislation and you mentioned political will. I think obviously perhaps our laws needs to be tightened even much more to ensure that. For example, I'll give you an example. I think as it stands, we need to have legislation that says that makes it more or less a crime, so to say, if school-going children, if they're not in school, that ought to happen. And I think that from where I sit here, I'll probably say that our state legislature and perhaps other legislature outside the state should focus on this to ensure that we should not have a situation where kids are left roaming the streets without some kind of consequences that will make people ensure that their wards are in school. And then when I talk about political will, it's about perhaps we could have done more to ensure compliance even with the existing laws.
All right, Dr. Ilanwo, let's take a break. Ilanwo, Ondo APC stalwarts tonight as we assess APC's preparedness ahead of November 16 governorship election. Dr. Ilanwo, thank you so much for staying with us on the program. Let's talk about our elections. And as a reference point, in the Ondo State 2020 governorship election, the total number of registered voters in the state was around 1.8 million, while about 595,000 voters were accredited. And the total number of votes cast was about 591,000. For this election coming up next month, INEC recorded a total of 2.0 million registered voters. And people are always eager to register, but a little over 30% come out to vote on election day. What do you think is responsible for this?
Yeah, I think for some of the electorate or some of the voters, there's not enough awareness, if you like, about the significance of the election process. They seem quite a good number might appear quite indifferent. That needs to change, and I think also INEC also has got a lot to do. I mean, INEC has to do quite a lot of sensitization. I don't think sensitization that INEC has done so far, it's good enough. INEC must be encouraged and must ensure that it does much more in this respect. And I think in addition, I think all of the political actors within the political space must also, there must be some kind of broad agreement and push, if you like, to bring people out on that day, to encourage people to sensitize the voters, to explain to them, the significance of the election process and the voting itself. So those three things, I think, needs to happen. Quite sadly, unfortunately, I don't think that we're having enough of that at the moment, and that needs to, sort of be in place.
Well, you've talked about INEC, you've talked about civil society organizations, but when you ask some Nigerians, they say they do not come out because of fear of violence. Do you think political gladiators, how do you think political gladiators contribute to that?
Yeah, I think that's to some extent that's probably a fair point. But I think that political gladiators need to see the election process and election as not a do or die thing. That's sadly in our climate, quite a few some of the political actors probably do, and that needs to be mellowed down. Election is a process, for people to present themselves and serve the people. It's not, it's not a process where people have to get desperate and all of that. Some of the things that we've seen in the past, which in the political space have not been quite encouraging, where people are, some of the actors are ready to do anything. They get into, some, very, very disappointing things to be able to push the election. That needs to change. So I take on board some of the points that have been made about fear of violence, but I think the police and security agencies can help in this respect. There needs to be confidence building measures from the security agencies that make the people realize that when they come to vote, they have a sense of a feeling of being secure, and we need to, the political class, I'm not talking about one person, I'm talking about entirely. We need to, people need to see election as just a process to get somebody to occupy office to just serve the people.
Yeah. Absolutely, because as a country, we've been trying to achieve electoral integrity for a while. And beyond mere election funding, another point to pay critical attention to is ensuring that more people turn out to vote on election day so as to avoid waste of funds. Because according to statistics for the 2015 and 2019 elections, the country wasted over 62% of election funds due to low turnout of registered voters, and that's over 250 billion naira. But as we work towards achieving electoral integrity, what workable measures must we adopt to ensure more participation despite the continuous increase in the number of registered voters?
Just like I said, there needs to be voter education. That I think too often it does seem to me. You
think when you say voter education, are we not doing enough?
We're not doing enough. But what I think seems to be happening is that as we get close to an election cycle, the education, voter education is somewhat ramped up by INEC and political actors. We need to get our people to understand, that from when we finish one election cycle, to make people understand that the election is very, very important. It's a way for them to be able to determine who they put in front to serve them, to change their lives. That whatever choices that if they come forward, it has a direct effect not just on themselves, but for generations unborn. That process needs to start from very, very early. So we need to do more in that respect. We also need to, ensure that, you mentioned the issue of, security and all of that. That is a very vital point. We need to ensure our security forces and all the political actors and everyone involved, all the stakeholders, we need to ensure that as we come out to vote, that there's a sense of, security. There's a sense of, the feeling that, people are safe, so to say. That is very, 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 very important. And importantly, we need to continue to have a situation. INEC has a duty to also ensure that the election process and the actual voting itself is transparent and fair, free and fair. Because that in itself will continue to engender confidence.
Right. But when you say we're not doing enough, who is not doing enough? INEC, CSOs, or politicians? Do you even think politicians do enough in complementing all what complementing what CSOs and INEC must have done over the past few years?
Well, I would say, politicians we seem to be doing something, but I think that we could do much better. When I talk about politicians, I'm talking across all of the political platforms. We need to do much better to encourage our members, to encourage our folks across all political parties to come out.
All right.
So, that needs to happen, and INEC as well. INEC needs to do much more. I repeat, because that is the electoral body that is charged with these things, essentially.
Let's talk about money politics vis-a-vis vote trading on election day. How do we address this menace, which many say has brought negative consequences to the country's electoral system? Do you agree with some stakeholders who have said punitive sanctions strategies are more likely to be successful than moralistic pleas?
Absolutely. I think that we've got to, if we're going to have a more robust electoral system, we need to send across the message that if people are not allowed, if people are made to vote under some kind of influence, money influence, for example, and people are found sort of promoting that, we need to send that clear signal that there will be some kind of consequences, and it's something that we've got to show a seriousness about, because if we don't, what's going to happen is that the practice will continue, and that will undermine continue to undermine our electoral system. So we need to show the will to deal with this problem.
There have been concerns raised over continuous decline in the quality of our elections, despite reforms introduced. Your party won the Ondo governorship election, but some of the opinion that the election failed integrity test, majorly due to electoral infractions, and this brings to the fore an ending wait for Electoral Offences Commission. As an overview, how do we achieve electoral integrity in Nigeria?
Like I said, we need to. It needs to be clear. The judiciary, stakeholders, legislature. We need to have in place very clear legislation that punishes, electoral offenders, and the judiciary must be seen to basically deal with this and deal with this firmly. Once we send a signal across to potential perpetrators that there will be consequences for these kind of actions, so once we send that signal that make people understand that these actions undermine our electoral process and electoral system, then I think gradually that message will begin to sink in, especially when we have quite a number of scapegoats. All right.
Just like I said earlier, you have a strong foundation in academia. So tonight, let's start from your experience as a seasoned administrator in the university setting. I want to talk about Nigeria's educational sector, grappling with multiple challenges, including a high number of out-of-school children, a barely functioning basic education system, and underfunded tertiary education sector. I mean, just today, the Joint Action Committee of the Non-Academic Staff Union of Education and Associated Institutions and SANU embarked on indefinite strike. Let's talk about how the current administration has fared with its approach to the education sector.
I mean, in terms of, for Ondo State, for example, I know that when this governor came around, he basically, like I said earlier, he increased subventions for institutions of higher learning across Ondo State. But I think funding for higher education and particularly higher education is a problem not just in our country but across the world. We need to find very much more ingenious ways of funding education. A system where the government has to will be expected to totally provide the funding for higher education. That system is ultimately provides limited funds and is not so sustainable. Stakeholders across board must come together and come up with other ingenious ways, other ways of funding education that will be aligned with the current system. I mean, that is the reality.
But talking about funding, Dr. Ilanwo, with increased budgetary allocation to the sector, introduction of the student loan scheme, how significant is this to the education sector in the country?
Yeah, the introduction of the student loan scheme is helpful. It's progressive. I mean, that's what we find out in very, very advanced clients as well. So, I mean, I commend the government for coming up with this. That is as it should be. So that's helpful. But beyond the student loans thing, we need to also continue to search for other ingenious ways of funding education. Stakeholders, for example, alumni bodies of universities, friends of universities or higher institutions of learning, other stakeholders must also key into helping to support education. Because what we ought to understand is that education is very, very pivotal, not just for the future of any society, certainly for the future of our state, for the future of our country. And that's why these stakeholders, wealthy individuals, well-spirited individuals ought to make it, some kind of duties to be able to support education. Government, government subvention and all of that is fine. It goes some way, but it's not enough. There's going to be some collaborative efforts for us to be able to get where we are. I mean, if you look at Europe and and America, I know that in these places, beyond support by government, other stakeholders get involved in funding education, and we've got to get to that kind of place. We want to produce quality schools that will, with some very good reputation across the world.
This is what you think President Bola Tinubu must look into, because he has promised more investments in education. He has also pledged to look into some harsh regulatory frameworks hindering the improvement of tertiary education in the country.
I think the government has, the president has taken a first good step of coming up with these student loan schemes. That's a progressive step. It helps the students. It's good for all participators. Yes, we must continue to find ways of improving tertiary education, of finding means. So I think it's right for the president to give that attention. I was a few days about 2 weeks ago. I was going through the ranking of universities across the world, and it didn't seem as if universities in Africa and in Nigeria, particularly, also are done as well as they should. That tells us something. We need to continue to invest much more. Encourage stakeholders to do so. If we are desirous of building, institutions that will be that will do some kind of reference institutions.
So let me have your perspectives on the expanding number of universities, which some have called a misguided priority, because Ordinarily, the increasing number of universities in Nigeria should be a source of excitement because an increment in number means increased competition and increased choices, which should lead to better standards. But reverse is the case. Do you agree with other stakeholders who continue to call this a misguided priority? Does this amount to trivializing the establishment of tertiary universities?
I think what has happened, I think, yes, there's a case, we've got to have enough institutions. There's obviously a case for that. But what has happened in recent times, what we've seen is that, quite sadly, perhaps political considerations and other considerations that are not exactly very important have influenced the setting up of some of these universities. What we need to be very cautious in setting up these institutions to ensure that, as we set them up, we have basically articulated and we have thought through how these institutions are going to be funded. There's no point having institutions that are struggling very hard with funding. Institutions that are, with the consequence of obviously not doing well and not of very good quality. So while I agree that we could have more institutions, but we've got to be very deliberate and cautious about it. And they must be guided by the right considerations of funding, considerations of the place of those universities in the education ecospace as well. Those kind of considerations ought to be in place before people are allowed to set up universities, or before universities are put in place. Muslim universities, or just because some people want universities in their area or in their locality, is not the way to go. It's counterproductive.
So what do you think this administration must do to sanitize it?
Yeah, we must set clear standards. The administration must set clear standards about what is expected of each university, and those standards must be enforced. Sadly, tough luck. If there are universities that are not meeting those standards, then we need to find a way of either ensuring that they meet those standards or closing them up. That's the sad reality. What we cannot encourage and cannot have is bad quality institutions of higher learning that are not delivering as they should deliver for our children and for future generations.
Well, you've consistently talked about funding. So let me ask, how feasible is total university autonomy? Can universities effectively fund themselves? I mean, a more competitive university market will ensure quality and rapid growth. So what are those innovative ways that will ensure a better funding model for our public universities?
Universities ultimately, autonomy for universities, it's good. It's a great idea. But our universities cannot, easily transit to that right now because, it will have consequences, particularly for people on the lower rungs of the social ladder. But what we can have, we can progressively, begin to articulate ideas or bring up ideas that makes these universities ultimately get autonomous. That will take some time, but that needs that thinking, that process needs to start from now. We need to ensure that everything that's going to be done, and our people, stakeholders, particularly corporations, companies, wealthy individuals need to take a greater interest in education, higher education inclusive. For us to be able to get to this point that I'm talking about. But yes, autonomy of universities, it's a noble idea. It's something that we should strive towards. But we should begin to the thinking process to be able to achieve that right now.
Right. Many Nigerians called for a rejig of the Federal Executive Council. They were of the opinion that some ministers were clearly not delivering on the mandate given to them, and the president has now reshuffled his cabinet. Were you impressed?
Well, I think that yes, I'm not very close to the criteria that the president used for sort of doing that rejigging. But there were quite a few of those who dropped out. We are expected that was going to be the case. let me also say that perhaps maybe there were some others that I thought, they could have done better, that didn't happen. But in all, I think what is important is that the president has basically akin to, what appears to be popular demand for him to rejig, and he has done so. Hopefully, those who are in the saddle, those who are in charge of the ministries now, or those who are coming on board, they will do much better. Because at the end of the day, this president as a mandate is coming at a period where this country has very, very serious challenges. So he's got a mandate to basically transform, if you like, the economy of this country. Make the country more prosperous against very, very difficult challenges. It is a statement of fact that things are challenging for many in the country. So it's against that background that is coming on board. So we cannot afford ministers or aides who are not delivering for the country. Right. And I'm sure that the president is very much aware of it, and which is why, for example, I know that he set up I think an office that basically analyzes or evaluates the performance of ministers. So
because you've talked about those who have just come on board, we have a new Minister of Education, Dr. Suji Alausa, as the new Minister of Education, and Suwaiba Ahmad as the Minister of State for Education. What are the tasks ahead of these two ministers in the education sector?
Well, the main task ahead of, for example, I think that they've got to, in the course of this interview, you mentioned a very, very important point about, many out-of-school children. So an immediate one for them is to ensure that, they bring many of those that are outside the school system, they bring them into the school system, ensuring an aggressive, if you like, inclusivity, ensuring the building of the necessary infrastructure that enables us to absorb many of these kids. Because, the future of these kids are at stake, and we cannot get it wrong at this level, at this point. So that is important, and also to ensure that we build higher institutions that begin to emerge gradually with some significant global ranking. That's about setting standards, ensuring that those standards are met, and supporting the universities as much as possible.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Sajia Ilambo, politician, technocrat, APC stalwart. Thank you so much for your time on politics tonight. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure.
And thank you so much for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at midnight. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram.